Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Green Rush on Friday afternoon, our live stream talk show about the world of cannabis. In this case, The Green Rush is focused on the business of cannabis. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. I'm joined every Friday by my friend David Rabinovitz. David, say hello.
Hello.
Good job, David. I feel like I could have him a ventriloquist kind of a thing. You go, okay, David, say hello, David. Anyway. We're very happy to be talking about the economics of cultivation with two guys. One is Ryan Cohen. He is the founder of Top Shelf Cannaseurs, and he is from Massachusetts. And the other is Josh Hardin. He's with Southern Grown LLC out of Little Rock, Arkansas. And we'll start with the Little Rock, Arkansas gentlemen, just because, you know, at weddings, you go home with the centerpiece if you come from the furthest to get it. So we're going to give you the opportunity, Josh. First of all, how do you grow cannabis in Little Rock, Arkansas, especially with a foot of snow outside your door?
Well, let's start. Thanks for having me. And I'll say, right now, all my cannabis is in Cali, Colombia. That's where I do the majority of my work. So, I have a good strategy for this time of year, right? I'm home right now, but I spend most of my winter working in Cali, Colombia for the government of the Valle de Cauca. So working directly with the government to kind of keep farmers moving towards a market, and everybody wants to know how to get to the market. It's part of the discussion with economics today, or a big part of that. How do we get to the market discussion? And that's kind of what's taken me to South America, was where is this going to be produced at in January and February in the U.S. Well, Colombia, we've just planted a crop about 3 weeks ago and harvesting other crops, and so it never really stops down on the equator. So.
And that, of course, is a great question to ask someone from the Northeast, because they don't have the type of weather that Colombia has. So, Ryan, how challenging is it to grow cannabis indoor, or can you actually control it better when you're in a controlled environment?
Thanks for having me on today, Jimmy. Yes, I would say that, having an indoor availability up here in Massachusetts, as opposed to probably year round around the equator, it's a lot easier to control the variables. The cost to produce is a lot higher in accordance with that, with the HVAC and the cooling and the dehumidification that it takes to grow indoors. So fortunately, we're able to get 5+ harvests a year indoor, and unfortunately, even in the best climates here in the States, you're really pushing 3 if you're lucky. And I think that's one good advantage, indoor versus outdoor. Obviously, the cost to produce is higher, but I think you can control the variables a lot easier and put out great product year round.
David, the economics of cultivation was your idea, so sure. I'm going to allow you to jump in here and take over and talk to your two guests. Go ahead.
That's great. Thank you, Jimmy. So Ryan, walk us through where's your company in what stage is your company in? Are you licensed yet, operational? And tell us a little bit about what the journey's been.
Sure. So we started Top Shelf Cannaseurs in December 2018, which seems like a lifetime ago. And
2 lifetimes ago.
Yes. So here in Massachusetts, it's a very arduous process to get to license. There's high cost of real estate. There's a lack of real estate in the M zone. And then there's a lot of bureaucracy that you have to deal with on the municipal level. The reason this has taken me so long, we're at the provisional stage, is just because it takes a lot of money and a lot of time to get there. And I think with our budget, we did a really good job. We had to pivot and move from Hudson, Massachusetts to Uxbridge, Massachusetts, where we're at now. We got a much bigger building and a better situation. So I think just taking your lumps and keeping on has really been important for us.
If you don't mind sharing, Ryan, what did it cost to get to a provisional license?
So we got our provisional in July of 2019, which also seems like a lifetime ago. But it took us about 2 to 300,000, and that was a lot of bootstrapping and a lot of sweat equity. I've heard upwards of 1 million or more to get to that same provisional. So we took a lot of pride in the fact that we did a lot of it ourselves, and we learned a lot of lessons along the way.
So
Did you learn from Caroline from
somebody
Uxbridge?
else here who
She
was
knows her
actually
stuff.
starting, what tips would you give them, like on the lessons you've learned?
I would say building a great team, establishing strong SOPs for when you are operational is really going to drive your hires. You can have the best hires with the worst SOPs, and you're just not going to get where you want to get. So I think spending money on that IP is really important. I would also say that be realistic with your time and your Gantt chart. We thought this thing was going to take months, and it's just embarrassing to say that it keeps getting bumped out and out and out. So really build in extra money and extra time when you're putting your conceptual budget and your Gantt chart together, and just be realistic with what this is going to cost, because it always costs more than you think. So
and for the audience members who don't know what a Gantt chart is, can you explain that to them?
So a Gantt chart is kind of like an organic chart that shows your accomplishments and shows visually kind of how long each task has taken. Initially, we thought everything would take a year, and so that piece of information was not helpful. And I've learned for the next time just to really build in extra time, especially things that are beyond your control, like municipal approval. We got held up in land court for 4 months. That obviously wasn't on our Gantt chart. So I could write a book on the trials and tribulations it's taken to get us this far. I also wanted to add, Dave, that since we started Top Shelf Cannaseurs, I've also started a manufacturing company called TSC Labs and a home delivery direct-to-consumer company called TSC Delivery. So I've been busy starting all 3 entities and happy to get started.
What was the biggest cash drain for you?
Honestly, holding costs. We had a pretty favorable lease in Hudson that wasn't so draining, and once we got up to a bigger building, I mean, it's our burn rate right now is just astronomical. So it's really starting to catch up to us. The 200 or 300 or so we took us to get to July 2019 has doubled or almost tripled since then with holding costs.
And with real estate being the biggest, the hold fees for the real estate being the biggest cost.
Exactly.
So if you were giving advice to somebody in the audience about how to approach the real estate, what would you tell them?
I think if you look hard enough, first of all, you want to pick a town that's not going to fight you. They're going to help you. I will say that Uxbridge has been really amazing in helping us in our journey. So pick the right town and make sure when you meet your landlord that he understands the situation. You also don't want to sign a lease that's not contingent. Many people think they're a shoo-in to get a license, and it just doesn't happen for a reason, and you're on the hook and you might be in court paying rent for the next 10 years. So I think realize what a place is worth. Don't get squeezed too much. The cannabis tax up here in Massachusetts is alive and well, and I think people are paying through the teeth and it ultimately it's not a good decision in the end, because their cost to produce is really affected by that deal you sign when you're in that honeymoon phase.
Right.
The question I got to ask, David, I'm going to jump in
Josh,
here.
Tell us a little bit about Southern Grown and what you do. I'm sorry, Jimmy. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Ryan, with all the regulations and all the taxes and everything, can you still make money in the cannabis business growing commercial grade weed?
Thankfully, you can, Jimmy. The benchmark pricing right now for wholesale is pretty outstanding. Josh, I'm not sure if you're privy, but right now, a prepackaged pound of AAA, out of this world cannabis is going for right in the mid fours right now. So about 42 to 4,600 for the best you can get. And the numbers look pretty good after that, Jimmy. The question is, how long will this phase be going? Because, if you look at other mature markets, the price comes down pretty precipitously once more operators come online. And I think you'll see in this year into next that those benchmark prices will go down from the mid fours, at least to the mid threes. So that's when the cost to produce becomes more important, because anyone can make money at 4,200 a pound. The question is, can you make money at 22, which is where you have in the Pacific Northwest? So I think automation, you might have to pay a little bit more in the CapEx in the beginning, but I think if you keep your cost to produce in mind in the beginning, I think you really can make money.
There you go. Have you seen Jim Belushi's show, Growing Belushi?
Yes.
Did
Yeah,
you
those
enjoy it?
guys are wild. I can't, you talk about racking systems to go high, vertical. Those
Yep.
guys, I think, are 5 or 6 high. And I just can't imagine the OSHA issues those guys have to deal with to put those guys on scissor lists like that. It's outstanding.
Cool. And then, by the way, I don't know if you saw it or not, Josh, but they did visit Medellin, Colombia, in that show,
No, I haven't seen
Growing
that one.
Belushi. And I last time I checked, that was in Colombia, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I haven't seen that episode though. I'll check that out. Yeah.
You'll enjoy it. It's only 3 episodes, and he's a riot. They did a nice job of embellishing to make it a little entertaining. Let's just say, great character development, and I think he was trying to sell his pounds for 800 in Oregon, right? Isn't that what he got for his pound or something? I think that's what it was.
I think I would say 800 to 1,000 in the most mature markets.
Wow.
And that's really a cost to produce right there. I mean, if you're doing it indoor, good luck. You might need some help with solar because if it's 800 wholesale, I mean, there's really not much left over.
Josh, can you walk us through what it's like to grow cannabis in Colombia, please? Because back in the day, let's just say I was a big supporter.
Right. Well, and let me tell you it's something I'll really echo something Ryan said, because I've dealt with the same issue in Colombia. I've been down there almost 4 years, and it's just all regulatory, work. Everything nobody put into their budgets. Really, if you looked at pro formas from 2017, they were all going to be in private jets, flying around the world by now, and multi-billionaires, but the reality is we haven't really exported the first, 100 kilos of oil out of the country yet. And so we're just so buried in bureaucracy and just very slow, paperwork that just never ends, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages from different departments, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Agriculture. Every ministry has kind of their own piece. And so it's just been years and a lot of money, and all the companies that I've worked with, some of them have just had to leave the country because it's just easier to go to Ecuador, or easier to go to Brazil, or there's other countries. Mexico's coming online. We've got a lot of countries in Latin America that are primed to produce a lot of product. It's just logistics, right? It's not, I don't think that it's a threat to the Massachusetts, high-end cannabis market. What I think I see is more focused on end products and topicals and creams and different types of products like that can be mass produced, along with just, big scale here within the next 6 to 8 months, dry flower. And so that's a big move to where we can export raw product to extractors and to different people around the country. So that's really what Southern Grown does. We're trying to really facilitate the farmers getting into those markets, and how do you sell into an international, chain of buyers. And if Walgreens wants to buy CBD, full spectrum product from Colombia, how do they do that? And how do they communicate. So we're kind of building the pipeline with the governments and private agencies and lots of different strategic partners to kind of oil all the pieces of this giant export import, CBD THC market. And part of that's just cost, getting these costs down has been a huge part of our work. And really everybody comes into Latin America thinking everything is cheap, and sure, fertilizer is cheap, but there's a lot of other things that aren't cheap. The attorneys aren't cheap. The accountants aren't cheap. And there's a lot of other things that maybe you didn't put into your prospectus or your really nice pro forma. You didn't expect, legal battles that would turn into a year of fighting, with local municipalities or, different land laws. And that's the same in the US as it is in Colombia. There are things universal. You don't know till you start to unwind the yarn, and you've always got to have cushion in your budget. I've found that when I'm skating on the edge of my budget, I'm always one step from disaster when there's not, an extra $10,000 or $20,000 there to cushion what's happening. If you don't have cash on hand while you're building and moving an operation into full capacity, you're in trouble because anything can happen. And, the local guy comes down, the local zoning commissioner or any of these people can make your life and your budget an absolute nightmare. And they have mine. I mean, they've extended my project dates years sometimes, just by showing up and declaring, something not right. Or losing a license over, I've lost licenses to different non-compliances, and it's just taught me big lessons because we've lost years, and I mean literally hundreds of thousands of dollars of money because we didn't have compliance and we didn't have all of that prepared and in our budget from day one. We weren't ready for it.
David?
Okay. So Josh, is most of your business down in Colombia, or do you also operate up here in the States?
Sure, we work here. We just signed a deal with Green Grow out of California. We're going to work with them to lay out some certified organic production. I think organic is a big part of what we're moving towards. With THC, it's a little harder to get some of these certifications, but with CBD, we see just an overwhelming demand for GAP certification, which is Good Ag Practices, and organic certification to really put kind of a brand, standard so that, you can send it to Australia or Europe or Canada or Mexico or wherever you need to go.
So that leads me into another question. I talk to a lot of growers, and my belief is, at least up here in Massachusetts, something Ryan kind of touched upon, prices are going to come down. And when the feds either decriminalize or legalize, we're going to have interstate transport, which means we're going to have to compete with marijuana that's grown in really low cost areas like the West Coast or potentially internationally. And then one of the common retorts I'll hear is, yeah, but you can't grow really good weed outside. The only way you're going to get really good product is growing it indoors. What do you think about that?
I think I would, here's my argument is if we find the right balance, we still have to grow. In Colombia, we're focused on growing in the soil, but under cover, under plastic with the right microclimates. We grow in over 15 different areas of Colombia where the microclimates are perfect. And we're talking 81 degrees, 82 degrees, and 40 to 50% humidity year round, 365 days a year. And so all we need is a little bit of light. We add just a little bit of, LED lighting, nothing big. We don't use sodium lights or anything like that, but just with supplemental lighting, we harvest 4 times a year. And, we're anywhere between 4 cents to 12 cents a gram is what our operating costs are. And so, we're able to sell, in South America, the average cannabis sells for $2 a gram, black market, in Bogota, Colombia. I was just looking this up, and it's one of the cheapest prices, around. And it's just because it's just grows so easily. But now getting higher quality and better, strains and genetics means more work, more cost, all of those things. But because we can harvest 4 times a year with, very little electricity, very little utility cost, we can really keep our per gram cost down. You know, under 10 cents is my goal constantly, is to keep that under 10 cents.
So
And
Ryan,
pre-rolls
how
go-
do you compete with somebody who's one of Josh's clients?
So you mean how would I compete with someone like Josh who grows outdoors?
Yeah, somebody who's growing outdoors with that kind of a cost structure. Right? Where's your competitive advantage in that equation?
You know, really, here in New England, there really isn't too many outdoor growers as of yet. There's a few different reasons for that. One being humidity, one being cold. So we really haven't seen that enter the legal market here in Massachusetts. If I was out in Oregon or Washington State and I was trying to compete with someone like Josh, I think what the differentiator would be you know, more kind of boutique. You know, you would really have to strive for a target market of quality. You could try and compete scale wise with outdoors, but it's still going to have to be quality in a very mature market. So in an immature market like Massachusetts, you know, I think there's enough leeway right now. People are buying anything that can pass testing. But I think as time goes on, you kind of either have to be a scale player or you have to be a quality player. And it's really tough to kind of have your cake and eat it too with that.
Hang on a second, David. I got a couple of things from the chat room. Okay. And
same here, Jimmy. Just can I jump in here? So Josh, what are the testing regs down in Columbia?
Testing rates?
Yeah,
Testing
what kind
regulations.
of testing is required?
Oh, testing regs. Well, look, it's with CBD, it's similar to USDA, you know, regs with, you know, when it comes to THC, it's all about everything in Colombia is based on the buyer. So if you're in, you know, Canada, which is where a lot of the product is going first, it's based on Canadian regulations. And so all the testing regs are based on the buyer country, the import country.
Got it.
Now the other comment in the chat room, and this was a statement by someone who's been very active in our chat room, and let's just say Cannaman. I'm not going to go into the last 5 letters or 6 letters, but fertilizer is not needed if you own organic soil. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that's right. I believe that. That's kind of where I come from. Look, I love indoor production. I'm a big fan of how I think there's a lot of sustainability arguments to be had about indoors, especially when you're talking about New England and production there. But when it comes to growing this plant and what it really wants, I think what we're all trying to do is recreate good soil, and why you can't recreate good soil better than good soil. You know, I think that's really always I'm trying to build. You know, in the tropics, we have a lot of metals and arsenic and things that we have to combat. And the same in the South, I deal with poor soils and lots of issues, but the ultimate goal for all of my clients is to have their finished product growing in good soil, because that's the lowest cost product you can grow.
Heavy metals always, whenever I hear heavy metals in plants, it just freaks me out a little. What is the why is the climate in Humboldt County and the Emerald Triangle so magical?
Yeah, so I mean, I speak a little. I went to college in Santa Cruz. I didn't mention this to you guys, but I worked in that area, and when I was getting my organic farming degree, I was working and on the weekends for different, you know, growers and that type of. And I really say it's a combination of humidity and temperature, and really it's about resources and protection, and kind of the people and the community are what built the Emerald Triangle to me. It wasn't just because oftentimes the weather's pretty crappy and you had to fight the weather up there a lot. The weather wasn't the best, but you're protected. You're in a good area. You've got most of the elements that the plant wants, as long as you can protect it. But you just had good community before. Now, you know, now it's kind of Wild West, literally all over again. But before, it was a very protected community where, you know, you were in a safe space. You could go and grow your product and get it to market and not have to worry about coming into contact with some of the worst elements, which I think exist now more than ever with cartels and just different, you know, kind of bad elements that are moving in there.
It's crazy, and there was Humboldt County was in the news this week. And by the way, coming up after this live stream is our weekly Weed Talk news. They banned hemp growing, legal hemp growing in Humboldt County. So there won't be any cross pollination. And I'll be perfectly honest with you guys, I didn't understand it until it was explained to me that that's not a good thing. You don't want your hemp plants and your THC cannabis plants together, even though I understand there's males and females, right, guys?
Oh, that's huge. Look, I grow a lot of CBD, and I mean, that's a huge issue. And I think we're going to have to deal with this as an industry. Where does fiber go? Where does CBD go? Where does THC go? And how do we kind of work this out amongst ourselves? Because it's like popcorn and sweet corn. You know, popcorn and sweet corn growers can't be neighbors. It's just the way it is. And you have to, your pollen has to work with your neighbor's pollen too. You know, we have to be responsible farmers when we're outside.
Right. And, you know, there's a 1-to-1 movement kind of going on, or 2-to-1, you know, CBD, THC. But that's not the way to do it, unfortunately.
Well, why do you say that?
Just because, you know, because a lot of strains are heavy in THC or CBD, and, you know, that produces a desirable effect, especially for a lot of patients. But to cross pollinate like that in an open field, would be, you know, would be disastrous, I believe, and that would be best practices.
Christina Di Giovanni from Emerald Media out of New York is a friend, and she spent 10 years in Humboldt County, and she called it seedy weed. You don't want seedy weed. You don't want that cross pollination. She explained that to me this week. And guys, you look, I'm trying to keep my hibiscus plants alive. It's been really tough this winter to do that. That's all I can say. David?
Either Ryan or Josh, and I know Jimmy hates when I throw it out like that. He prefers I pick somebody, but whichever one of you is more comfortable with this, can you explain what are living soils and what are the benefits of using living soils?
Josh, I'll defer to you. I can dig in, but I'm sure you can really dig in.
Sure. You know, look, as an organic farmer, I think there's a lot of products and a lot of people that are kind of after this business of living soils. You know, to me, it's about microbiology and mycorrhizae. And, you know, we use a lot of different fermented products, whether that kind of starts with compost and goes to bokashi, which is kind of ancient Japanese techniques of fermenting. And, you know, I use these things indoors, outdoors, kind of all around. They help with disease control, with, you know, when you truly have a living soil, which I think is made up of compost and good nutrient, you know, holding, you know, perlites and different types of nutrient holding, vermiculites, things like that. But I think ultimately it's about organic matter and having, you know, active portions of the soil that are living and breathing and perspiring, because those things are what really gets the cannabis plant going. And that's what produces lots of THC, lots of CBD, lots of terpenes, lots of all the cannabinoids come from all of these kind of active processes in the root system. And the more we stimulate, you know, that system, the more we get everything else. And some of that stress with THC, some of that we're kind of stimulating and creating stress to make more THC. But with CBD, we're doing the opposite. We're constantly trying to keep the plant not stressed and keep it unstressed always. So I think it's good to balance either of those in the system.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add, guys, Jimmy, you mentioned soil earlier.
So that came from the chat room. I'm going to give credit to our chatters. Go ahead.
So, you know, soil is a medium you pay for. Living soil, you get to reuse. And not only do you get to reuse it instead of recycle it, if you do it right, it gets better and better with time. You know, Josh mentioned bokashi. You know, some of these practices date back to the Incas and you know, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years back to Mesopotamia and the beginning of time. So, you know, it's also a great way to control your cost to produce if you have living soil. Not only do you not have to rebuy that soil each time, but you also can save on nutrients and do it in an organic fashion, which, like Josh said, is going to boost the THC, the terpenes, and it's just a more desirable finished good that people in a immature market like Massachusetts might not demand just yet. But if you go to Oregon and you see what sells for more, it's going to be that no-till living soil, finished good that people are really looking for.
I had no idea. Hey, do either one of you guys have botany degrees, or is this all just learned knowledge about growing?
Sounds like Josh does, but I've been growing since 2005, 95% indoor, a little bit of greenhouse. And I've just kind of learned that as I've gone. And I believe Josh has a little bit more base. Do you have a degree in botany, Josh?
Well, look, my degree was in agroecology and ag education, but I just grown up on the farm. I've grown up selling fruits and vegetables and growing and selling at farmers markets most of my life. I started selling, tomatoes and watermelons and cucumbers. And my dad is a vegetable farmer. And, when I started growing cannabis on the family farm, I always tell my dad this story because he takes CBD oil and he's a big fan now, but he used to confiscate my plants. My brother and I used to have plants all over. My dad would threaten to exile us from the family farm, forever. And here we all are. We're in 2021. Arkansas has a legal, a medicinal program, and things have changed quite a bit. So it's been good to kind of live through that in the South to see, my old man who's kind of an old traditional row crop vegetable farmer, but that's where I get it from. And so cannabis to me was a love very early on. Now I get to actually make it my career, not just kind of the thing we were all doing in high school and college. And kind of that was my entry.
Amen.
To it.
That's right. Living the dream, right? Living the dream. I think it's great, guys.
Yeah.
We have come so far. It's why we call this show the Green Rush,